respective locations, even your respective companies, on your insight on this topic. So thank you guys for joining with us. We're so grateful to have you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Thank you all for being on this panel.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Thank you all as well.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.
So the next thing that we're just going to be transitioning to as our panelists head out is another keynote speaker. So this next keynote, her name is Lynda Aphing-Kouassi, and so she is going to be speaking on the topic of financial inclusion for women entrepreneurs. So for those of you that are just joining in, my name is Alicia Wright. I'm an education advisor here at FinMango. And as Lynda comes on, I just want to share with a little bit about her. She's a former banker and founder of Kaizen, a firm specializing in training, coaching, and networking conferences. The process of creating African leaders and encouraging the inclusion of women is the core of her business, which she tries to achieve by her coaching and training sessions. Passionate and rigorous, Lynda has extensive experience in the management of companies and employees in a diverse range of sectors. So thank you so much for coming on and joining us today, Lynda. We're so excited to hear from you about women entrepreneurs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Well, I hope you can all hear me very well. Unfortunately, I haven't been very well those past days. I had a 3-day course in hospital. So excuse the tone of my voice today. Right, let me adjust this. Am I okay, Alicia, to start about me and obviously sharing a bit about me? And
yes, we're excited to hear from you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So as Alicia alluded to, I've got a background in finance, and I've spent about 15 years in the banking industry before deciding that obviously I kept on investing people's money into fields that obviously was good to them, but I couldn't see the actual social impact on the people around me and my environment. And instead of complaining about it, I just decided that the best way was for me to push myself and get into the actual activities in order to change what I called at the time the world. Whenever I told this to my friend at the time, they all said that maybe my passion was going out of my head, or maybe I wasn't really thinking straight. But I realized that there was a big gap in the market, and that big gap was about being fully trained, having that extensive level of confidence in us in order to go after the things that we dream of, and making sure that they convert themselves from a dream to reality. And way too often we see everything that we desire in our dreams, and we don't really push ourselves to go for it. So that's how my journey started, with another long stories about family and all the support and the ecosystem that I built around me. And I came back to Côte d'Ivoire, which is my native country, having spent 22 years in the UK and 15 in the bank, and decided to set up the firm. But the firm was meant to be doing what? We were supposed to be finding the right talents and pushing the right talents into delivering what they didn't even know that they had it in themselves. So it's finding that inner self and making sure that the whole world knew about your inner self, which is sometimes the best part in us that we too often keep hidden. And we started with the soft skills training. It's not all about spending our time saying to the whole world that we have the best degrees from Harvard, from Stanford, and any other places. It's about making sure that we are well equipped to ensure that all the theories that we've learned are enough for us to have the most and best behavioral attitudes whenever we're going to be in the actual activities. And this became a passion because I could see that too many people were worried about spending time telling us about themselves, and they had so much in them that would be useful for their environments. And eventually I started pushing them into the right direction, which allowed us to create Kaizen. So by saying that we focus on training and coaching, it's really, to me, saying that we focus on the capital, on the human capital. The human capital is the only entity that we don't really see on the balance sheet at the end of the year, because too many companies focus on the numbers. But the human capital is the one that we don't focus. especially the female human capital. We don't really focus enough on it. And for me, it's not all about having a discussion about female participation, female inclusion. It's about ensuring that we have a great balance and a great mix with male and female by educating the male in the right level, and obviously pushing the female to do what they have to do by still being themselves, not losing their femininity, but just making sure that their talents and their knowledge is shared widely and that everybody knows about them. So this adventure started like that, in a small room without any sort of money. I'm just going to use my own experience so that you could see how things are possible when we are driven. And I literally had nothing when I started. And few friends allowed me to have, at the time, what would be the equivalent of about $300. And that $300 didn't go very far, because you need to set up a firm, you need to set up a business. It was only enough for me to set up the paperwork. But I've put that passion into delivering, and I started offering those services to the companies for free, because I knew that these services would be necessary to develop the human capital. And a few firms obviously took up my services for free. So I was out of money, but I was sure that my services would be known by the rest of the people. And that's how I've managed to have everybody else know about who we were. And I've approached the largest companies. I've approached the largest company without any sort of worries, because my mind was already set onto winning. And this is what I've pushed myself to do. To me, it wasn't about leaving the bank just for coming back home and flashing my experience on people. To me, it was important to share the experience, the issues that I had, the piece that I found, how I found it, and how people could obviously just find it themselves and be better at what they're doing. And this is how I started sharing it across all the companies. And then our firm became known. Very little I knew. After a year and a half, some people were telling me that they had the feeling that we existed for about 20 years, because we've done such a huge lobbying about it. I spent my time going into firms and pushing my ideas. What am I trying to tell you here? What I'm trying to tell you here is that no matter how much you may have in you, it's not all about having that in you. It's about having the capacity. Have the capacity to do that, and have the willingness to do what you're trying to do. But be passionate and be willing to change the world. Be willing to change the situation. Don't think that you need X amount of money to start something. Just make sure that you're passionate enough and that you set your mind onto the winning button. And if the mind is not on the winning button, on the winning tune, make sure you reset it whenever you're going to start. I remember speaking to one of my clients one day about our training, and I realized what was missing was the implication of the youth, the female youth and the young boys. And I realized that we too often did what we had to do, obviously based on our experience and our passion, but without including the youth, who are today's future. I mean, when I say today's future, I hope you see what I'm trying to say here. They are what we have today. They will be what we need to have tomorrow. And it's in that sense that I say that they are today's future. We need to make sure that the youth are fully implicated into what we do. So I've decided to have every week a session with some university students that will come to the office, and we will be discussing how they need to impact their environment and how they need to approach the working place, the entrepreneur's world, and how do they need to be, what sort of attitude do they need to have in order to be taken seriously as a force to be reckoned with. And I invited quite a lot of directors, companies directors, and I've placed them face to face. And in order for that to work, I trained those university students to ask the right question. Ask the right question without being scared of what you really expect to have as an answer. The answer may not be something that you're expecting or you like, but at least you get the chance to have this answer. And this answer will obviously determine the attitude that you need to have to ensure that tomorrow you ask that question again, but you're fully equipped to start working with that person potentially, or to take that answer up and then do what you have to do as a business person. And it's with that mindset that I train those university students to make sure that they were not scared anymore, that they were not worried about asking any wrong question because there isn't such thing, to make sure that they were willing to push the boundaries and understand that the world was such a big oyster and that there was room for everybody regardless of the mistakes that we would make. And it's with that idea in vain that I obviously just kept on pushing the youth into that management space, into that leadership world, into that training modes, and coaching them in having more confidence in them. Too often on our continent, we see that we have a big barrier. The youngsters don't really want to approach the most senior person because they believe that they're probably going to be taken out of context, or there will be a lack of respect or any situation as such. And it was about ensuring that you make sure that your voice is heard. You made sure that whatever you're talking about is obviously something that's going to have an impact, not only for you, but for the rest of the society. Identifying the weaknesses and making sure that you are not worried about talking about what seems to be important to you. And it's, to me, the most valuable lesson that we can share to ensure that we have inclusion and to ensure that everybody has his own space into that big world that we live in today. And it's a passion to me. I will be able to speak about it for about 20 years, 30 years. But the whole idea here is about being driven, changing our mentality, not only having that sense of ownership that everybody owes something to us. Because at the end of the day, believe you me, nobody owes you anything. Nobody owes you anything. And it's about how hard you work towards a goal. That's only when you get what you really deserve. So the minute you think that you're owed something, you relax. Your brain seems to be going into the reverse mode, and you're not pushing the boundaries. You're not showing your strength. You're not showing your aptitudes. And that's what the world needs to see. And to me, those are all the elements of my story. Because if I have the ability to talk to you today, it's because that's what I did. I've been pushed out of firms when I started this journey of Kaizen. Having sold my businesses or my services for free, I obviously was out of pocket, but I still had to carry on. And then I had to go into other offices and sell them that same training, same coaching at a very low cost. So I knew where I was heading. I knew where I wanted to be. And I wasn't scared of losing money at first in order to make sure that people would take me seriously for the force to be reckoned with today. And it took me about 3 years to obviously just have that level of credibility so that people would take our courses, our services seriously, and other firms would be interested in collaborating with us. And these 3 years were the longest 3 years of my life, because I'm not going to tell you that it was a walk in the park. No, it wasn't. There was days where I didn't have anything in my purse, where I would be thinking that I need to drop everything. But I knew the direction that I wanted to give to the people, and I knew where I was going. I knew the gap that I wanted to fill up, and I knew that the world needed me. And it's in that frame of mind that I kept on pushing. Let me not lie. Everybody is not fit to be an entrepreneur. This is not a walk in the park. It is something that you do once you've decided that you've identified the gap in the market and you're willing to fight, to do everything as hard as you can to ensure that you succeed. It is not something that you have to do because your friend is doing, because your sister is doing, or because you see somebody else doing and apparently earning a lot of money. It's only something that you do because you can feel it in your gut. And you can feel like the world, as I say it again, needs you. And it's with that idea in mind that you are able to obviously just fit in and touch base on what you need to do. Otherwise, it's impossible. Otherwise, it would be impossible. There's a valid point in fighting for what we want. And if we don't fight for what we want, we are not going to get it. And it's important. I had someone at the door as I was telling you I had a journey in hospital, so please excuse me. And it's important to make sure that whatever you do has a meaning, not only to you, but for the rest of the world. Otherwise, your journey will be absolutely pointless. The other point in all that I'm telling you, and I hope you've managed to pick up on, is let's not have our environment define who we are, because we focus more on the environment instead of focusing on what we wish to bring to that environment. And I said it earlier on, we don't do what we have to do for the sake of our friends, our sister, our mom, or our nuns. We do once we've identified the gap that we want to fill in, which means that we want to impact our environment. We don't want the environment to have this impact on us. Otherwise, it may trouble our minds, it may put us behind, and it may not push us into the right direction, and it may not allow us to stand up when we fall. And that is the part that we shouldn't let the environment play on us. Because I said it, if the world needs you, you cannot afford to be on the floor. If you are the one that had that great idea to change the world, what authorizes you to stay grounded? What authorizes you to stay on the floor? You need to take off just like the eagle. You need to go. And it's with that sense of passion, that sense of mindset that's been activated to positivity and to changing the whole world that you need to drive, and that you need to make sure that your plane takes off and stay up. And that the whole world obviously sees that you're only injecting only greatness, goodness, and obviously positivity that is needed. Nowadays, across Africa, what do we see? This envious attitude about everything that comes from the Occident, everything that comes from Europe, everything seems to be good from elsewhere, but not good enough into what we have. We need to approach our local content in a better sense of belonging, because it belongs to us. And it's what we have. So the local content, the fields that we have, the tools that we have where we're from, that will define the changes that we make. I'm not saying let's not collaborate with Europe, with America, or anywhere else, but appreciate what you have where you are, change what doesn't work, and then collaborate with everybody else, having been fully proud of what you have, of your local content, and then share it across. Because at least once you do it with passion, and you do it with that excess knowledge that is needed. Without that knowledge, you are unable to do any single thing. The last thing that I could potentially talk about, which is dearer to my heart, is training the girls that are literally in primary school and sixth form. Why do I train them, and why do I coach them? Because to me, they're the future. And they shouldn't really be the female that are going to come tomorrow and think that they just need to be, they're not worthy of anything. They can't apply for any sort of high level position. They can't put themselves into boards. They can't approach situation with that level of femininity. And if they enter the room and there's too many male, they feel worried, and they feel they're not going to be taken seriously. And it's important today that they understand that thing. That thing is what? You are as deserving as anybody else as you enter a room. Just your knowledge is the power. Don't actually care about how you look like. Don't actually care about what everybody else thinks about you. Just make sure that you know what you're going to go and talk about. Impress the world with your knowledge. Don't worry about your look, because your look will fade at certain points. But make sure that your knowledge is always purified. Your knowledge is always pumped up. Your knowledge is always afloat, and that you cultivate every little tool that will ensure that every time you discuss with someone, they are actually thrilled to talk with you. They are thrilled to listen to you, and they feel like they have tons of questions to ask you. And then you realize that your look, your gender doesn't matter anymore. All that should matter is what you know and what you're willing to share and how you're willing to share it. Do not actually think of changing who you are, how you look like, for the sake of the environment. So it was important for me to make sure that those points will come across. My story it's a long story, and throughout the points that I've given you, I'm sure that you've already identified how I managed to get to where I am today, which is still not a place of privilege, because I'm still fighting to ensure that I keep changing the situation that I want to change around me. But I'm doing this with a lot of humility, but by making sure that I keep pumping my knowledge all the time. And trust me, the more knowledgeable you are, apparently the more beautiful you become. So let's keep striving to knowledge, to learning, and to having just one mindset, that positive mindset that nothing can stop us. Even if we fall on the ground, we are still going to stand up and carry on. There's no shame in falling. I fell and I keep falling. I stole and I keep stalling, but I'm still going. Even to date, with that coronavirus situation that we are all facing, the business hasn't been running. And if we train, we're obviously working on face-to-face, and we have a lot of people that we need to discuss with. But obviously today we cannot anymore. What do I need to do? We haven't actually had any sort of income coming in for the past 12 weeks, which is a huge issue for a business person. But do I really want to stay and think about this issue, which is a problem? Or do I want to reconvert myself into something that will define my business in order for the business to stay alive? This is the mindset that I've given myself, because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We need to change. We need to have a winning mindset, and we need to keep pumping ourselves. The business model needs to be changed and applied according to different situation. Make sure you pay attention to your environment. Don't let your environment pay attention to you, and make sure that you define every aspect of the business that you're going to do, the work that you're going to do, or the impact that you wish to do based on the aspect that you would have identified in that environment. And it's very important. And don't pay attention to the way everybody else is going to get to where they're getting to. Don't look at this. I always say that in the 100-meter race, there's always the winner, yes. But whenever they do the score tables at the end, everybody's names is placed on. That means that no matter even if you come last, you're still going to get there. And that's what should obviously just come about. That's what we need to do, and that's what we need to remember. And it's important to find talent in ourselves and to wish to share with the rest of the world. So I hope I've given you a little bit of insight about what I've done and the sort of attitude that you need to do. And the last word that I can add is that we all have our role to play, and that gender, yes, is becoming a huge topic today, but we shouldn't actually confuse the gender balance with women wanting to have the power head on everything. That's not what we're asking. The gender balance is just about making sure that we are not worried or scared about entering any places of power where the male seem to be dominating and obviously taking our rightful spots. It's just about asking our rightful spots into any sort of society, places, environments, and making sure that we are known for our best qualities. And I say it again, the world needs you, you need you, and you need to make sure that your inner self strive and comes out.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing, Lynda. Thank you.
Thank
One of
you.
my favorite things that you were able to share was when you're talking about training the girls, there's a quote you said that I was like, wow. You said, "You are deserving as anybody else as you enter a room." So thank you so much for just speaking courage over women entrepreneurs. Thank you for, just encouraging us that they really can impress the world with their knowledge, not necessarily be worried about, stepping into the room and caring about what they look like necessarily, but more about the knowledge that they've gained and being able to, just be a successful entrepreneur. So thank you for sharing, Lynda. We're so grateful that you could jump on. And I hope that you start to feel better, because you said you're in the hospital right now.
I know. I'm feeling much better. Funny enough, the past 3 days, I had some dizziness. I think I was overdoing it. And my body was probably telling me to slow down.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
Better. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So as we